Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Faith and Recovery Live. We are outside again tonight, but since we're getting closer to fall, there's not much sunlight at all. I do see some lightning kind of off in the clouds, but I don't hear it, so I'm thinking it must be a little ways away. I have had a cold lately, and so I have a drink here in case my voice starts to get a little scratchy. Some flavored water. I'm gonna hang out here and see if anybody shows up, and I am a little bit late tonight, so just in case someone was keeping an eye out, we'll wait to get started. But our topic tonight actually comes from a comment that someone left on a previous Faith and Recovery Live. So if you, during this video or some other time when you're, watching it in the future, if you have a question that comes up or something that comes to your mind while I'm talking or throughout your day, if you want to throw a comment on there, I do respond to those, and I do sometimes choose those to become future topics of later, future Faith and Recovery Live videos. So you might be able to play a part. You might be able to participate that way. The topic that someone brought up was, because we talked about faith and recovery, we talked about surrender, we talked about, a few things like that. And so this person asked the question, what about when, what about when you have doubt about whether you can continue on in your recovery? What if you have doubt if you're able to stay in recovery or able to hang on to your faith? And so that's the topic that we're going to be talking about tonight. Couple things, first of all, come to mind. Sometimes it's very easy for us to look at the topic of faith, believing, as the opposite of doubt. And I don't doubt, have faith. Or if you have faith, you won't doubt. And I feel like that is maybe that's a good way to explain it to your 7 or 8 year old. But in the world of adults, I think we deserve a little bit better definitions. Doubt is in fact questioning something, looking at something and evaluating whether or not it is sure or true or solid. And typically it's doing that evaluation with some kind of a negative slant, some kind of a negative presupposition. So if I am walking out onto a bridge and I'm doubting that bridge, I'm going to be walking slow. I'm going to be listening carefully for any creaking sounds. I maybe have my hand on the banister of the bridge, hanging on real tight just in case my arms have to support me because my legs, go out from under me because the bridge fails. If I'm terribly full of doubt, I will just run back off the bridge. But the idea of doubt is evaluative, is assessing, but typically with a negative foundation. So I have something negative in my mind about this thing, and so as I am evaluating it, I have that negative thing already in the balance against it, so to speak. That's I think a better definition of doubt. Now, what is faith? If you come from a religious background, you probably have some sort of answer to that in your mind, and you have probably even said some sort of an answer to that. And I'm not going to spout one of those right now. But faith, the definition that I have that works well for me, is the idea that faith is, I call it living as if. Oh, hi, Ashley. Welcome. Faith is living as if. So if I have faith in something, or if I believe in something, I live as if. So if I believe in a chair, then I will live as if that chair can do what that chair says it can do. If I believe in my vehicle, I'm going to live as if it will carry me. It will, if I believe the gas pedal works, I'm going to live as if it will. I'm going to press down on it. So the concept of faith being live as if. Now, what I hope you've understood, what I hope you've noticed, is that there is not an absolute required exclusion between these two things. So it is possible to live as if something is true and yet still doubt it, still evaluate it with a negative presupposition. It is possible to take the actions of belief while still holding an attitude of doubt or a mindset of doubt. It is possible to do that. Now, one question you might ask is, well, what would be the value of doubting while trying to maintain faith? Well, that is actually not a bad position to be in. And this is actually a very common position that we as humans hold, and we as intelligent humans hold. We do this a lot. So, for example, anytime you go to a place of business and you encounter a salesperson, most typically, you are living as if what they're telling you is true, because you're in the building going to purchase what they're trying to sell you, but you are doubting them. You are evaluating them with a negative presupposition in your mind. So most of us, when we interact with salespeople, we have this faith and doubt dynamic going at the same time. A lot of us, when we encounter healthcare professionals, so some of you may know I work as a registered nurse. When I walk into the room for the first time, I know that person sitting in that chair or lying in that bed, they are evaluating me with a negative presupposition. Okay, that's part of the job. When a doctor walks in to tell you something about your labs or about yourself, a lot of times you're living as if you believe them. You're living as if they are your doctor because you're sitting in that office. But there's some suspicion. There's a foundation of at least possible mistrust. As you listen to them, you're evaluating them, and you're not necessarily saying, "Oh yes, everything that comes out of your mouth, I totally believe and accept." So this dynamic of having faith and doubt at the same time, this is not uncommon. We do this a lot. Now, another term that might be useful to introduce right now is the idea of something called tension. Tension is when you have two things that are some distance from each other, and there is some amount of force or pressure in opposite directions. So if you have tension on a chain because you're pulling a log with your truck, the log is pulling one way, or at least is exerting a pull one way, and the truck is pulling the other direction. If you have tension on a guitar string, there's a post down by the where the hole goes into the music box. There's a post there, and the string is anchored there, and then at the other end there's a key, and that string is pulled in the opposite direction. That creates tension. The idea of having faith and doubt at the same time, this is what we call tension. This is what we call holding things in tension or living with tension. These are two things that pull in opposite directions, but they're not logically impossible to both hold, but they do have opposite directions that they're pulling. This creates something called tension. Now, the thing is with tension, there's a couple things to keep in mind with tension. I've already mentioned guitar, violin, piano. These are instruments that require a string to be under tension in order for music to be made. There's a case to be made that in order for our lives to have some sort of influence, there has to be some kind of tension. In order for our lives to have something come out of them that expresses itself out into the rest of reality, our lives will have to be under some sort of tension. If our lives are not under some sort of tension, if there is no tension in our lives, then when we encounter other things, when other things bump into us, there's a dead sound, there's a thump. We absorb the impact. But if we're under tension, then when something impacts us, we give off a sound, we give off a frequency, we give off some kind of a note that goes out into the rest of the world. And this tension of holding doubt and faith at the same time, if you've ever seen someone struggle with a question, you've ever seen someone work through something that was hard, ever seen someone do some kind of hard task, something that was difficult for them, something they had to really fight to get through, that was them under tension, having something leave them and go out into the rest of the world. And so having faith and having doubt at the same time is one of the ways that our lives actually send out a note or send out a message. But that doesn't mean that it's not valuable. That doesn't mean that it's not real, doesn't mean that it's not true. Now, something else to keep in mind. One of the reasons why I think someone might ask this question of, what do you do when you have doubt in your recovery? What do you do when you have doubt in your faith? You're not sure if you can believe that you can stay in recovery. Or you're not sure if you believe that you can keep your faith, you can hang on to your faith. What do you do with that? I think it's important to look at a couple things. What is faith built on, and what is doubt built on? I think it's a very common misunderstanding that faith is somehow built on just thin air. That faith or belief is just kind of, you think it could be, and you hope it might be, so you believe that it is, and that's faith. That's not faith. That's not what that is. I am, pardon me, I'll take a drink right here. Much better. I mentioned earlier that faith is living as if. Living as if is not based on thin air. Faith is not based on thin air. Faith is based on what we know. What we know is what we base our faith on. So if you decide, I need to have faith in this rope to hold me as I swing out on this tire over the creek, I need to have faith in this rope. The reason you can have faith in that rope is because you have had previous experience with rope. Now, you've never had experience with this rope, but you've had experience with other ropes, maybe smaller ropes, maybe ropes that were shorter. But because you have had an experience with a rope somewhere, you take that memory of that experience and you carry that experience and you say, you know what? I know that rope can be strong. I have experienced or learned about rope being strong in the past. I'm going to carry that forward, and I'm going to let that inform or tell me how to believe now about this rope. And so you get on the rope swing and you swing out over the creek, and because your hands are slippery, you slip off and you get on YouTube and America's Funniest Home Videos. That's how that happens. But it's based on something you know. Now, what does this have to do with faith and recovery, Brian? Are you finally going to tie it together? Yes, I will do that. When we go into recovery, we don't believe that we can be in recovery. We don't have faith in our ability to be in recovery based on thin air. We don't just hope and therefore believe. We don't just pull it out of, thin air or some other place and say, I can believe because I can believe. Or I believe in believing, or I have faith in faith. Like that's nonsense. This is why we go to meetings. This is why we read books. This is why we read the big book. This is why we read the white book. This is why we read the stories. This is why we listen to other people's testimonies. Is because our faith is built on something that we know. And as we have the experience of seeing other people's lives, and we can listen to their story and say, I can find myself in that story. I've been there. I've done that. And then their story goes on and they say, I was able to make it through this and through this. That's where we get our faith. That's how we have our faith. This is why recovery cannot happen in isolation. Because if I'm the only one in my story, then there's nothing for me to hear. There's nothing for me to believe. There's nothing for me to hang on to. And so if I'm going to have a story, that I can believe in, something that's going to teach me and inform me and give me some kind of something to anchor my faith to, I have to listen to somebody else tell their story about how they made it through, and I can base my faith on that. That's something that I can know. Now, as we go on in our recoveries, our stories begin to be opportunities for us to generate hope that way and generate faith that way. Because we can look at, oh my goodness, I just made it through a whole week without using. I just made it through a whole week without acting out. That allows me to have faith that I can make it for one more week. Now, most of us don't live a week at a time. That's what the just one day at a time is all about. One day at a time. I just made it through one day. I can believe that I can make it through one more day. I can make it through one more day. I can make it through one more half a day. I can make it. It's 3 o'clock now. I can make it till 4 o'clock. I can make it that far. I'm not saying that because I'm just pulling a number out of, nothing. I know that I just lived through an hour. I believe that I can live through another hour. My faith is based on what I know. I believe in my recovery, not because I just have to have something to believe in, and not because I just have some weird hope that it'll be okay. It's based on actual things that I already know. Either I know in my own recovery, I know I've been through this, so I know I can make it through, or I know that that person made it through, and that person made it through, and that person made it, so I base my belief in my recovery on what they've gone through. Now, like I said, this can't happen in isolation. This is why we have to be around people, but this is also why we have to be honest. This is why we can't have secrets. Because if I'm holding a secret, I will hear that person's story, or I will remember the day that I just got through. But instead of being able to have faith and say, hey, because of that day I just got through, I can make it through one more day. Or because that man made it through, or that woman made it through, I know I can make it through. The secret in my mind says, yeah, but you don't know if they've done this, and you don't know if they've done that, and you don't know if somebody's going to find out about this. You don't know what's going to happen if this turns loose. That is a different kind of doubt that is a lot more crippling. That is the doubt of the secrets. And honestly, the only antidote for that is to get away from the secrets. That's why we do inventories. That's why we do a fifth step. That's why we are fearless and searching moral. That's why we seek honesty and transparency in all of our activities. That's why we do that. It allows us to access belief. It allows us to access faith. It allows us to hold in tension a healthy doubt and a strong faith. So a healthy doubt in recovery is, can I do this on my own? Or a healthy doubt is, can I actually pull this off? And then the faith steps in and says, well, actually, it's not you, but you saw that person do it, and you saw that person do it, and you know what they relied on. You're relying on the same thing, so you can make it through. That healthy doubt questions the things that need to be questioned. But a secret actually cuts me off from being able to access the faith, which is the other side that has to be held in tension. So I have to get rid of the secrets in order for my doubt to be healthy and actually allow my faith to be strong and pull me in tension against that and make something that goes out into the universe. Now, how does this have anything to do with faith? Not faith just as in the action of believing, but faith as some kind of a relationship with our higher power, with Jesus. Doubt is a very important part of that too. Okay? Just like we hold things in tension in our recovery, we hold things in tension in our relationship with God. We hold things in tension with our relationship with Jesus. God doesn't always make sense. God's ways are higher than our ways. He doesn't owe us an explanation. There are things that happen on this earth that don't make sense to us humans. There are things that hurt that don't make sense to us humans. And so that creates doubt. That pulls us in the direction of doubt. But if we live as if God is good, if we live as if God is sovereign, if we live as if God is just and righteous and loving, then that tension pulls against the doubt that we have of, there's no one running this. This is just a crazy, chaotic mess. Or God is not good. He's an unkind God. He let this happen, or he let that happen, or he didn't stop this, or he didn't do that. That's the kind of doubt that comes as a part of having a relationship with God. It's a part of having a relationship with anybody, but God is in that camp too. If you have a significant other, if you have a romantic partner, then you have doubts, okay? Because there's some days they come home and they're not nice. And there's some days that you come home and neither one of you are nice. And you have doubts. But if you continue to live as if, you give something, some kind of tension, the counterpoint to that doubt can actually strengthen your relationship, because what happens is it reinforces the value. So if you have a romantic partner, someone you live with, a spouse, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, and you doubt them, and then they come through, that becomes a fact over in the faith column, okay? That becomes an experience that you can then look back on and say, I doubted them in this moment. They were not nice to get along with in this place. They were difficult, they were stubborn, they were whatever. But then we came through it. And then that becomes something to base your faith on, okay? The same is true for God. If we will stay in relationship with him, if we will live as if he is good, we will live as if he is just, we will live as if he is loving, then the doubt that we have of, I don't understand how you can be good and this thing can happen to me, if we will just stay in that relationship, that doubt, when we come through on the other side, will actually be a fact, a truth in the faith column for us to then tackle the next doubt and say, okay, I know this looks horrible, but I remember that he was good at this point, even though I thought he wasn't. He actually was when it turned out he was good. So I can look at this thing that looks like he's not good again, and I can believe that he is good. And this is why we have to tell our stories about our faith. This is why we have to tell our stories about our doubts in our faith. We have to be honest. We have to be truthful and transparent in our faith. See, it's the same in both faith and recovery. You can't have secrets in your faith. If there's a struggle you have in your faith, that has to come to the light. Just like if you had a struggle in recovery, that has to come to the light. And just like we learn how to have faith by hearing the testimonies and the stories and reading the stories of our friends and brothers and sisters in recovery, the same is true in faith. That's actually what the Bible is. It's a big, long story of people that had horrible struggles, huge doubts, and yet God came through for them. So at the church that I attend, my home church, I lead a Bible class, and we were studying Abraham. And Abraham goes to a situation where God asks him to do a very hard thing that looks very terrible. And Abraham steps up to do it, and then God Abraham from a huge sorrow and pain and protects Abraham's family. And from then on, you see a change in how Abraham interacts with God. Like he doesn't doubt him anymore. When difficult things happen, he doesn't run away, because he has this huge thing that he just went through that started out as a doubt, but then shifted to the faith column, the belief column, because he went through it. And it now becomes a fact he can base his faith on. I'm going to take another drink because my voice is getting raspy again. Sorry about that. So, I hope you can see faith and recovery, both. Having doubt about whether we can be in our recovery, we can stay in our recovery, having doubt whether we can be sober, having doubt whether we can have faith, having doubt whether we can actually believe in God, that's not a problem. That does not automatically cancel out that we can have faith and have recovery. Just because we have doubts, that doesn't shut it down. That doesn't make it inaccessible. In some ways, that makes it stronger. There are people in this world who have a job called quality control. Now, what quality control is in the context of this conversation, how we would describe them in this conversation on this Facebook Live is quality control people are professionals who are paid to doubt. That's what they do. They pick up the car axle or the computer keyboard or the laundry detergent, and they put it in a machine and they do all sorts of things to it, doubting it, trying to judge it with a negative presupposition, trying to push it to its limits and see if it will fail, see if it will break, see if it will crumble, see if it will do something wrong. They doubt professionally. That's what they do. Now, why would we have an entire industry devoted to doubt? Well, I mean, we have some pretty senseless industries in this country, but this is not one of them, okay? This serves a very important function, and I already told you, they're called quality control. The reason that a company can say, hey, we guarantee this product, we guarantee this truck, we guarantee this, cooking oil, is because there are people who did all the doubting for us. There were people that work in that company that spent hours doubting that cooking oil. They spent hours doubting that truck. They took it into situations trying to make it fail, pushing it to fall apart. They did the doubting for us. What we do in our lives, if we hold that tension, if we will hold that tension between the faith and the doubt, if we will hold that super tight and life hits us and then a note comes off of us and goes out, what that is that's us doing the doubting for somebody else, paying it forward on the doubt scale. So this is why, I already told you, why we hear people's stories, why we are transparent and let people see into us, why we tell our secrets, is so that we can work through the doubting and the holding the faith and allowing the faith to become alive in us. But the other side of it is we are transparent and we tell our stories, not just listen to stories, but we tell our stories. And transparent, not just letting things in, but letting things out. Letting people see what's inside of us, not just to hold us accountable, but letting people see what's inside of us to let them gain from our story so that we can do the doubting for them. Because that's actually what the people did for us that we read their story. Okay? They were the quality control on the recovery. They were the quality control on the faith for us. And then our story becomes that for the next person. Faith and recovery do not require us to not have any doubts. Doubting does not destroy our faith or our recovery. If we will allow those doubts to just stand there and endure them and continue to push through them, they can actually be a huge part of strengthening our faith or our recovery. Having a doubt about whether we can stay in it is perfectly healthy, and it's everybody does it. That's the human experience. But the key is whether or not we quit in the middle, or we just say, you know what, I know I have this doubt, but I'm going to hang on to it anyway. I'm not going to let this doubt derail me. I do trust that this has been helpful for someone. I appreciate each one of you that were a part of this Facebook Live. And if you have, like I said, if you have any comments or questions, feel free to drop them in the comment section below. If you have a topic you'd like me to unpack sometime, feel free to put that in the comments. I do enjoy responding to comments, so know that I will see what you put there, and I will read it, and I will respond to it if it's something that responded to. And I will see you all next week. Love you all.